Look around the room you're standing in. 4 walls, 4 right angles, a ceiling parallel to the floor, rectangular windows, step outside. One road cuts across another at a perfect 90 degrees. Parcels of land align like a chessboard. It feels so familiar that we stop questioning it. But our ancestors didn't live this way. Ancient European villages curved along rivers, hugged hillsides, and branched like living trees. The truth is, this much of the United States, and by extension, modern architecture, infrastructure, and even spatial culture lives in the shadow of an administrative decision made more than 200 years ago. A decision that turned land into squares, and squares into the norm. In the land division system developed after the 18th century, a section measured 1 square mile or 640 acres. The number sounds dry and technical, but it became the foundational unit that shaped how we think about land. Why 640? Because 640 equals 8 times 8 times 10, a number that divides easily. It can be split into 320. Ibailosher, Bosher, or 40 acres, without producing messy fractions. That mattered in an era when records and calculations were done by hand. But there was also a deeper reason. In the late 18th century, a family with the labor of a few adults and children could realistically manage about 160 acres, or a quarter section. If climate and soil conditions were favorable, 640 acres defined the larger framework. 160 acres reflected the rhythm of everyday life. From there, farms, roads, and even town planning began to revolve around multiples of a mile. When you drive through the Midwest and notice a road crossing every mile, you are moving along the heartbeat of the number 640. What's fascinating is that even though modern agriculture now relies on massive machinery and global supply chains, this measurement framework still persists. GPS systems, land registries, and even how banks evaluate property continue to rely on it. A number from the 18th century still quietly shapes the 21st. In a grid system, curves are disruptors. Curves are harder to measure, harder to divide, and harder to price. Every right angle promises clarity. Every curve reminds us of uncertainty. In Euclidean geometry, the area of a rectangle is simply length multiplied by width, but a curved parcel requires integration, or at least painstaking measurement. In the 18th century, that meant higher costs and more disputes, so the grid system prioritized efficiency over aesthetics. Straight roads were not only easier to build, they were easier to sell. A square parcel is easier to value than one shaped by a wandering stream. But what was the price of this convenience? Gradually, we began to see curves as exceptions. New cities expanded according to square logic. Suburbs spread outward like a vast checkerboard. Our visual culture changed as well. We grew accustomed to square ceilings and rectangular window frames. Even the screen you're looking at right now is a rectangle, a direct legacy of grid thinking. We don't just live in squares. We think in squares. If you examine satellite maps of the Midwest, you might notice roads that suddenly shift unexpected 90-degree turns in otherwise flat landscapes. Locals call them jogs. They are not random mistakes. They are physical traces of 19th century surveying errors. When 2 survey teams started from different points and moved toward each other, even a tiny astronomical measurement error, just a few arc minutes, could accumulate into a misalignment of dozens of meters. Earth is not flat. Its curvature causes parallel lines to slowly converge. To compensate, the system introduced correction lines. When grids met but didn't align perfectly, a jog appeared like 2 pieces of checkered fabric stitched together slightly off pattern. These turns are physical artifacts of data. They reveal that maps are not merely abstract images. They are layers of information engraved onto the land itself. Every time you make a small, seemingly irrational turn at an intersection, you are crossing a 200-year-old margin of error. The grid system didn't just divide farmland. It also created a patchwork model of public and private ownership, especially across Western states. One square belonged to the federal government, the next to a private owner. Then another public parcel. This checkerboard land ownership, originally aimed to encourage railroad construction companies, were granted alternating parcels along rail lines. But the consequences still shape the landscape today. When national forests sit beside private property, access becomes complicated. A public area may be surrounded by private land, making entry nearly impossible without permission. Socially, this checkerboard produced fragmented space. Instead of villages gathering around a shared square, landscapes became scattered pieces, each governed by different rules. The grid is not just a shape, it is a structure of power. Ironically, that rigid geometry is incredibly friendly to automation. Modern harvesters operate most efficiently on rectangular fields. GPS systems map and optimize routes more easily when boundaries are standardized. Self-driving vehicles rely on digital maps, digital twins of the physical world. When roads follow a grid, navigation algorithms become simpler. Artificial intelligence learns more effectively from structured data. 2 centuries ago, surveyors placing stakes on open prairies never imagined robots. Yet by standardizing space, they unknowingly laid the groundwork for the machine age. We once believed we imposed the grid on nature to control it. Now, that same grid helps machines understand and navigate our world. So the real question is no longer, why do we live inside squares? It is this: when the world is designed for geometry, is there still room for curves, for spontaneity, for the organic nature of human life? Perhaps the secret behind those 90-degree turns is not technical at all. Perhaps it lies in the belief that order can be drawn with a ruler,